All right, everybody. Welcome to Skyfire Live. I am your host, Matt Sloan, CEO of Skyfire. That Ben Cole, our COO, and the special guest today, Caleb Holt, founder of Tech. Hope everybody is enjoying our new theme music. I know we definitely are. As you can
tell. That was exciting. That was super exciting.
This is the most fun we've had on Skyfire Live really ever. So
you mixed your music. That was amazing.
Yeah, I
Matt stayed up all night writing it. Actually,
I did. I composed it on my laptop last night. So forgive me if I can barely get words out. I've been up all night composing.
That was fantastic.
Good times. Good times. Well, welcome to Skyfire Live, Caleb. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing we want to get out of the way right at the beginning, in the interest of full disclosure, Caleb is an investor in Skyfire, but that is actually not the reason we wanted to have you on the podcast, believe it or not.
Okay.
In fact, all the reasons we did want to have you on the podcast are all the reasons we wanted to have you as an investor and be part of our team. So Caleb, for those of you who aren't familiar with Caleb, he is the man to know in first responder technology. I've known you 5 years now, probably, Caleb, I think.
Sir.
And tell us a little bit about your background and sort of what you used to do and now what you're doing with Safe Tech.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you guys having us and the music to really get me pumped up and get started in this. I'm going to ask for this on every Zoom call going forward. So I spent 12 years at Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service. We refer to it as TEAC. Some people in the fire service just refer to it as the Texas A&M Fire School. And really got my teeth wet in public safety technology there. So if you don't know who TEACS is, they're the world's largest emergency response training organization. Pre-COVID, they trained 190,000 people a year from 83 different countries. Obviously, this year's a little bit of a different year, but had incredible leadership there under Gary Serra. And he stood up the product development center and asked if I would be interested in leading it. And, when I found out that every day of my life, someone would want to call and pitch me a new piece of technology, I found that to be very, very difficult to turn down. And so I have had great opportunities to work with numerous first responders along the way. Also, for a period of time, I housed, my office was 3 doors down from the chief of the Texas Task Force 1. So it was Billy Parker in my initial year there. And then it was Chief Jeff Saunders after that, which is the FEMA search and rescue teams. And just being in that environment and hearing about the issues and concerns and types of technologies that we were looking for in real time. And it became very, very real during Hurricane Harvey here in the state of Texas. And I was getting text messages. Hey, do you know where we could find this? Hey, do you know where we can find this? And, I realized I wasn't just a guy who knew about tech. I actually could put some of it in play. And so the last 5 years I was there, I did testing and evaluation for the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. But most famously, the last 3 years, we managed a big contract for the Pentagon. We ran the tech transition program where we moved DoD technology into the public safety space. So did that from 16 to 19. I reached 10 years full time. I had been at TEACS for 11 and a half years. And essentially, I decided it was time to go back into entrepreneurship. I think at the end of a decade, you get to the point where it's very difficult to convey to the startups and the young, innovative companies that you're talking to while you're on a cush salary and you're very comfortable to empathize with the stress of being in the startup world. So at least that's how I felt about it. And I knew that there was time for me to go back out into the private sector. And to be 100% honest with you, I formed a nonprofit only to do philanthropy. All I wanted to do was provide donations primarily in 3 ways. So one, I think the valley of death is third-party testing and validation. And so I wanted to provide grants for technology to do third-party testing and validation. I had a unique experience. I was the president of a Lions Club here in College Station, 2014 to 2015, when our county experienced 3 line of duty deaths. And I became very aware of how those chiefs then reacted to technology from the standpoint that they were now interested in solutions that maybe prior they wouldn't have even considered, but they absolutely knew that they wanted solutions so that they never experienced those types of situations again. And so they became very eager to find solutions. And Chief Randy McGregor and Bryan Fire Department is very interested in finding what we all call the Holy Grail tech, which is how do we track first responders inside of a burning building. And then the last thing became really potent for me after speaking at the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation Symposium last October in Philadelphia is in 2018, 2019 was the first year that we started recognizing suicide as a line of duty death. And just for anyone that listens into this particular podcast or going forward, just know that the way that my brain works has nothing to do with religion or politics. When I hear about bad things, my brain immediately goes to what technology have I ever heard pitched that would have mitigated that situation, that could have created a change there. And, I was pre-med before I got my master's. And so I've always had a fascination for technology. I'm specifically interested in technologies around nutrigenomics, and I'm interested in things around brain training and neuroscience. And so I saw tech in that space that I know that can help people out in these areas. And, we serve through Safe Tech, which is our nonprofit, which we've gone 5 minutes of talking here, and I haven't even mentioned it, but that's why.
We'll get there.
But, I know that there's technology that can help us reduce suicides in law, fire, and our armed forces. And so those are the 3 things I wanted to do with our nonprofit when we decided to file the paperwork.
Well, and before you left TEEX, one of the things that we did together, you ran the event Under Fire, where you gave the opportunity to a bunch of companies to pitch their technology. We were lucky enough to be a sponsor the second year that you guys did it, and just sitting there looking at these technologies, I'm like, man, that is such a simple thing that really would have made a huge difference. I'm thinking specifically about ladder light. Those guys, they showed how long it takes to actually find a ladder inside of a burning building that, a ladder you've put in the window and you're trying to figure out your way out when things are going south, and just putting a light on the end of it. Like, oh my God, that's so simple. But, they showed us actually in the smokehouse.
Like a strobe light?
Yeah. I mean, it's like literally you just install it on the end cap of your ladder. And they showed us like inside of the smokehouse, we actually experienced it live. Like, how hard is it to find the ladder without the light? And then it took, I don't know, a few seconds to find it with the light. And it was like, that's it. Like, that's all it takes to potentially get somebody out before they fall through a floor. I mean,
yeah, the testing that they did on that. And, I had an amazing team at TEEX, and Paul Siebert, who, by the way, congratulations, was just named the program director for municipal fire instruction at TEEX.
Oh, wow.
The testing he conducted on that, it's just blatantly obvious. If you put anything on a roof at night and then you put lights on it, it's so much easier to find the one that has lights.
How about that? Yeah. I mean, but that's exactly what I'm saying is like, there's companies out there that make that stuff. And I don't know if this is their specific situation, but, little startups that are like, hey, we're having trouble just getting people's attention, getting the third party testing and evaluation, like you said. How do we get this in front of more people? And that's kind of the purpose of what you're doing, what you were doing at TEEX and what you're now doing with Safe Tech.
Yeah, I think I do want to kind of at least give credit to the team. I realize how random it can appear from time to time in terms of the types of technologies that we put in the room. But the truth is that's the furthest from the truth. We look at what are considered high priority needs across every single market that we're addressing. So one of the big things that we do know without question, and the number of videos that we continue to see, primarily 2017, 2018, was firefighters getting trapped on roofs or falling through roofs. And we knew that that was an area for line of duty deaths, and it was a high priority for us to find solutions in that area. And so we used to pull the National Homeland Security. They had a high priority technology need. The Interagency Board used to have a high priority technology need. The National Institute of Justice still produces a high priority technology need. And then also DHS has what they call the FFRG, the First Responder Resource Group. And DOD, they have a whole different sort of road mapping that they put out there. And so we're always looking for reduction in line of duty death. And as simple as the lights on a ladder might look, it was becoming a very large issue of having first responders trapped on tops of roofs and them not knowing how to quickly get back to their ladder because they become disoriented and things of that nature. So I realized that, you know, sometimes when you would come to the events, you might not understand how they're all interconnected, but everybody on our team could actually trace it to a high priority technology need that would reduce line of duty deaths.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's fascinating because I was sitting there watching, I think there were 10, you know, and all of them, I'm like, wow, yeah, I never thought about that. Or yeah, that's a need that's very obvious. Another one, you know, a team we've become very friendly with, the guys at Firehead, who make a wearable that, you know, tracks firefighter biometrics while you're inside of a fire. And right. I mean, that's pretty obvious that that's a source of line of duty deaths, you know, people getting overexerted and overheated, and particularly, you know, some of the older firefighters and stuff like that. I mean, I've seen that happen in you know, live. And so stuff like that, I just think is fascinating. So tell us a little bit about like the transition to the private sector, Safe Tech, your own company, Axlebox. What of those, you know, what technologies are you sort of looking at? What are you interested in? Which areas in particular?
Yeah, so let me make an explanation for, because I did indicate that Safe Tech was something that I wanted to start just as a philanthropy arm of our for-profit, which is called Axlebox. But I need to expand on that for just a second, and then I'll explain Axlebox. But I'm not joking. People can believe in higher powers or God or divine intervention or whatever it is that they believe in. Just know that you're not the biggest person on earth. And the day that I received my Secretary of State filing for my nonprofit, I received a phone call and was asked if I'd be willing to take over a 7-year-old nonprofit that specifically did commercialization work in Brazos Valley, which is where I live here in Bryan College Station, Texas. And so it took me a little bit of time. I met with my attorney on this. I met with a couple of my mentors. And what we realized is the value of the nonprofit allows us to do so much more than just philanthropy. And so we're going out and we're bidding for a bunch of contracts that give us what we hope to be a huge resource for public safety innovators across the country. And we can dig into that a little bit more in a minute. But, you know, for me, I will tell you that one of the big things we've changed with Safe Tech is we're a membership-based nonprofit. And we've identified, now COVID obviously has had a significant impact on this, but we already identified who our 100 founding members were going to be. And then we didn't get them locked in before COVID. And so a lot of people have been sort of pushing out expenses and marketing expenses through the end of the year. But we do have 27 members so far. In addition to that, we have stood up a National Advisory Council, and I'll explain that Advisory Council in a minute, but that's about to add another 13 members to our 26, so we're really excited about that. But Axlebox, I'll be 100% honest with you on Axlebox. Axlebox is a technology development firm that what I told everybody and what I still think to be true today was set up to do the three things I could not do at TEEX. Because I love TEEX, and I don't think there's anywhere in the world that you can go and find that number of first responders, that level of training expertise, and essentially the types of facilities that you can get at TEEX anywhere in the world. And for those reasons, those are what we want to work on with TEEX. We want to do testing. We want to do first responder feedback. But what I couldn't do at TEEX was I could not help you negotiate contracts. I could not help you do fundraising, and I could not help you with your manufacturing. Now, I could point you in the right direction, but it's always been something I'm very passionate about is actually tangible products. Like, can you put it in your hand? And if you can do that, that moved you very high up in my order of technologies. And so I look at 750 to 1,000 technologies a year. Through that D2R program that we ran for the Pentagon, we looked at 3,500 different technologies. And I'm not trying to tell you that to impress you. What I'm trying to do is tell you how many technologies I've looked at. I have chosen 10 out of my top 50 technologies to work on first. And I'm also not joking when I tell you those 10 are because I have 4 dependents. So my wife and my 3 kids stay at home. And so I had to choose slightly later stage, what I call growth stage companies that had the ability to get to revenue very, very quickly, because I intended on my wife being able to stay home and raise my family. And I have 3 kids, and they're 3, 5, and 7. And so they're growing and they're getting big. And actually, if you guys ever come to the Safe Tech offices, which everybody is invited to come here, I actually have offices right outside my door that says Junior Executive Nora and Junior Executive Cooper. So they work at our organization. They're allowed to come into any meeting that's not covered under confidentiality. Now, they can't talk, but I allow my kids to really be a part of what I'm doing. And it means a lot to me that they care so much about what we're working on, and they want to know updates on technologies. When I tell them, like when I told them, hey, I'm going to go to Vegas, I'm going to actually be seeing Skyfire and the DS30. I get on the phone with my son that night. I'm like, hey, how'd your day go? He goes, oh, it was fine. Hey, show me a picture of the DS30. Like, what does that look like? Like, how did Matt do when he was on the, and I was like, well, it's Mr. Matt. Well, how did Mr. Matt do on the stage? And so my kids are really invested in what we're doing, and that was really, really important for me. So we chose 10 technologies, the very good diversity in our group of technologies. But more than anything, they're growth stage. And I have a customer for every single piece of technology. And I knew that those technologies could go and be successful, because when you go out on your own, you've got to have a track record of success. And every technology that we have right now is specifically focused on enhancing public safety, first responders, and our armed forces. And all of them have received some form of contract in the last few years. The other thing I'll tell you, this is a personal mission of mine. Back to what I was mentioning about, I always go to what technology can alleviate that. I am on a 10-year mission to put gunshot detection in every school in the country. And so I've put the date on the calendar. By January 15th of 2030, there will be gunshot detection in every school in this country. And so 2 of the technologies that I think are required for us to accomplish that mission are in our portfolio. There's one that's not, but I know who it is. I monitor it very closely, and at some point in the future, we'll pull it into the portfolio as well.
Hey, Caleb, can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the technology some of the specific stuff out there? Is there anything that's like really jumping out at you right now that you're excited about that you can talk about?
Yeah. So I'll show you this one. So this is the Carbon Watch. And I met this in 2015 through Emerge, which was the wearable accelerator through Homeland Security. And so we currently have an Air Force contract with this. And so it has 4 monocrystalline cells on the face of the watch. It dumps it into our singular battery pack system here, 500 milliamps. And so I can put a 40% charge on any device with this watch. So I just take this off and I can charge any device. I have a number of cables that I can use to charge it. I just turn it on like so. And now I'm in charge mode, and I can charge whatever I want. I can turn it off. By next year, by May of next year, we'll have what's called Carbon Air. And so it'll be 1,000 milliamp battery that does wireless charging, no more cables. And what I would tell you for outdoor enthusiasts, imagine going to a game camera, pushing power to the game camera and pulling all of the footage off without actually touching the camera. And so that's what we're trying to do through that. I think that's a really interesting play on technology. I personally believe that, I mentioned DS30. I still think that's the coolest drone out there. But in addition to that, I think that the opportunity around, it's just very different to have a conversation around the concept of building a drone to mission specific applications. And so I think that that's the future of drone applications. It's not, do you want the 100 version or the 200 version or the 300? It's what's your mission set? And then let's go build that drone. And so I know that Skyfire has acquired Viking UAS. So I'm very excited about that personally. Our portfolio is focused on advanced materials and the Ascentium HSC company. If you haven't heard of them, you definitely, we all suffered a loss by not getting to go to South by Southwest. They were one of 8 companies that got a strategic enhancement to their SBIR. And for the next 4 years, they're going to be building flight-worthy components for the Air Force, flight-worthy materials for additive manufacturing for the Air Force. I personally think that that technology company is leading edge. And then the last one, well, there's a bunch of them, but I'll just mention the combination that you're seeing. And I think it's very timely given the frustrations in this country. I think that, I put in a blog post, I have not met any person I know or any cop that I'm associated with that thinks that the George Floyd was not just the most vicious thing they had ever seen. It's absolutely wrong, and nobody I've ever talked to disagrees with that. But that has led to this continuous rolling of defunding police departments. Apparently, they've already done it in Minneapolis. They're working on it here in Austin, Texas. And I think there was an executive order that the president put out yesterday with a fraternal police law enforcement officers on this particular topic. But what I can tell you is that the frustration is validated, and I completely understand where it's coming from. But so I'm part of a bunch of different conversations, and one of the things that was said by a good friend of mine was that what we cannot tolerate, both Black Americans, white Americans, is we cannot tolerate lawlessness, right? And so there's this narrative that law enforcement officers are not following the law, just like there's a narrative that protesters are not following the law, that begin to loot and riot and things of this nature. We know that those are the very, very low, less than 1% of people. But as we move towards what future community policing and things like that are going to look like, I think it is going to be technology like Wi-Fiber and Blue Force that allow us to have quality of life, meaning walkable Wi-Fi and 5G in high density areas, but also Wi-Fi access out in HUD housing and lower income housing, so that those children have the same ability for access to internet for education, but then also sensor fusion. So, we think about right now with what's going on with COVID-19, and I've seen I've seen decks from the University of Alabama. I'm obviously pretty tied in with A&M, and I know that contact tracing is a huge concern right now. Is how do we trace all of these students, who they come in contact with? How do we do this as an employee? And so with that concept of quality of life and human health, technologies like Blue Force and Wi-Fiber give us a unique ability to know where people are so that we can maintain a quality of life of not having lawlessness, but it also gives us the ability to enforce some things that otherwise we wouldn't be able to do. And I just saw an amazing example of this the other day, where their combination alerted law enforcement of protests 5 minutes before they actually received a phone call indicating that a protest was occurring in a very particular space. So I think that that's the future, and so I'm very excited about that set of technologies. And then you start coupling that with, unmanned technologies, drops of, blood, medication, all of those things, medic supplies and things that are also going to be a quality of life element. I really think the next 10 years are going to be really, really exciting to kind of see how this technology comes to bear. And, I think it's going to be in my opinion, anything you thought was going to happen by 2025 or by 2030 is going to happen in 5 years faster because of the current protests and injustices that we've seen.
Yeah, and you combine that with the fact that we're all stuck in certain places and can't go out with, coronavirus affecting everybody as well too. It's kind of a weird perfect storm where technology is becoming, a very apparently the solution. I know specifically in the drone world, there's been a lot of conversation about, man, it sure would have been nice if we had drone delivery in time for COVID, because, it'd even make it that much easier for people not to have to leave their houses and things like that. So
if you follow telehealth at all, they will tell you that medicine is already 5 years in front of where it was in January. Doing electronic patient visits, the amount of time that a doctor is able to spend with a patient, that level is up. There's a lot of good things coming from a technology advancement standpoint that was pre-COVID, unthought of, or it was going to be 5 years out. I can tell you just a thing that we enjoy here in Texas is our governor has now made it legal to take alcoholic beverages with you to go. And so apparently that's something that's going to stick going forward as well.
Yeah, if there's any good thing to come out of all this, it's that one for sure. Alcohol to go. Because I know we got it in where we live in Decatur, and everybody's very, very happy that you can get a gallon jug of margaritas for the road. So agree with you on that one for sure. So I totally agree with you about the smart city stuff. In fact, we're going to have a dare on one of these going forward, talking about smart city technology. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Wi-Fiber, it's a system that's based on a street lamp that has all kinds of technology, interconnectivity, and some super cool stuff. And then they're working with Blue Force, which is a software company that does a lot of sort of data aggregation and reporting. So both very interesting companies and friends of ours as well too. What do you tell us a little bit about Safe Tech and sort of on the nonprofit side, the membership side? What do you get for becoming a member, and sort of what's the sales pitch for becoming a member?
Yeah. So that has changed in the last 3 months, and largely because we wrote our mission set to essentially popularize, and I think even when the two of us met here at the Stella Hotel, I mean, I almost want to create I wanted to make sure that we took safe technology and elevated it to hero status. I think that everything in this market really gets caught up and doesn't want us to, take credit for the hard work that these innovators are doing. And so in doing that, you have to lower the cost of entry. And so let me give you an example. So if you get into public safety technology, your immediate thought is, I got to go to conferences. And so the basic booth cost at a conference can be anywhere between $2,500 and $5,000. And then you got to send 2 people there, because if you are going to spend that much, you can't, if somebody goes to the bathroom, you can't afford to have that booth empty. And then you have food cost and per diem and all of this stuff. And to me, the barrier of entry was way too high. And so if you don't know, I still to this day chair the Technology Council for the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And 2 years ago at FRI, we decided to bring back the Innovation Corral. And so we put 20 companies inside of a very large space, and we turned all of them facing in, so that the first responders actually had to come into the corral, and they actually had an opportunity to meet with all the technologies. Well, FRI or IFC did a heat map, and that was by day 2, that was the only place people were going. Because on day 1, you would go, see your fire truck vendor, and you'd go see your other vendors. But then you didn't want to look at anything else. You just want to know where all the cool stuff was. So we had our friends at smartfirefighting.com, the podcast. They were running a podcast right in the middle of that corral. And the cost of those companies was $1,250, which was a fraction of having to have their own space. And so I say all that to say this is, we've done best practices. We've seen what's doing. So if you join Safe Tech, when conferences begin again, I just found out yesterday that FRI has officially been turned into a virtual conference, which I was pretty disappointed about. But when there is a conference, we will always have an innovation corral. We've already identified what those 8 major conferences are. So as a member, you get access to the conference space with us. The other thing that you get is we are going to be doing road shows. And so we already have 1,500 first responders that have said, you know what? I really like the idea of you showing up and giving us access to 20, 30, 50 pieces of technology. And we have a director of service, a director of member services that works with departments before we go. What are their high priority needs? What's on their budget list? What would they like to see? And we focus on that tech first. And then there's always people like Ben that say, yeah, but what's the cool stuff? And then you got to show them that stuff too. And so we have those lined up, and it blew my mind how eager those chiefs were to, yeah, bring that to us. And so all we ask is that they bring mutual aid departments with them so that we can get the most bang for our buck. We're going to put that technology over the road, and we take it out and we show it to everybody. Now, a couple other things that we have modified and made some changes is, I want to make sure that startups make it through this COVID-19 era. And so we now provide proposal development services to our members to make sure that they have access and even know about what are the actual funding opportunities that are out there. So as soon as you sign up, you also get access to something called Safe Tech Insights, which goes out today, the third Wednesday of every month. And we tell you, here are the funding opportunities that we're tracking. If you're interested in this, please let us know so that we can actually get in touch with you, make sure that you have the right qualifications, that you've done the paperwork that's necessary, and we'll even help you write those first few proposals. And we have a great team that helps out with that. And the other thing is we still have a really, really great network of first responders. And so we want to create those first responder interconnections. And just like we're doing a virtual call here, when you join, we'll set up your next 5 calls for you. So, the saying is, if you spoke to one department, you spoke to one department. And so we know that to be true. You got to talk to many of them. So we'll set up webinars. We'll give you one-on-one conversations. And so we have a different insight where we actually push that out to, I think it's 1,563 first responders that have signed up for the Safe Tech Insights. And we tell them, here's the cool tech that we know about right now. Here's the road show that we're considering. And in addition to that, we say this month, this technology needs end users to help us out. We need feedback. We want to know what the use cases are. And so right now we're doing that for one of our members called TAC Alert. And so if you listen to this and you're interested in radioactive detection and nuclear detection, make sure you reach out to us because we can put you in contact with what we think is some pretty interesting technology for detecting in that space. And so those are things that we're doing. And then the last thing I'll tell you is if you're going to travel the country, you need to have great resources in every region of the country. You can't just take off to Seattle and think that you're going to be successful. And so we've put together a national advisory council. We had our first meeting 2 weeks ago, but all of these are companies who have agreed to help us out in a proposal that we put together for the Accelerate R2 network, which FirstNet is hopefully going to be awarding to some company here in the next few weeks. But when you join SafeTech, you will now have an office location and a partner that you can call and they will help you out. In Atlanta, our good friends at Skyfire. In Washington, D.C. with Public Spend Forum and Public Safety Network. In Chicago with W.S. Darley and TechNexus. In Colorado with Intera Group out of Colorado Springs. If you're in the Seattle area, Western Fire Chiefs Association is on our National Advisory Council. And then also if you're down in California, our good friends down at 911 Go and the Consume This Fire District are also going to be helping us out there. And obviously, if you come to Bryan College Station, we actually have a fab lab here that we've put together where we essentially can take anything electronics, anything advanced materials, anything with engine and oil, and we can help you modify it, prototype it, or scale that sucker up for manufacturing. So we really have been putting a lot of pieces together that we think are necessary. The last thing I'll tell you is that we've just submitted an actual application. The feedback we've received on this from some of our strategic partners is pretty good. So I think we're going to move forward, whether we get funded or not. That's sort of the thing that stresses my team out. As I tell people, we're writing these proposals, and if we get the funding or not, this is what we're doing. And so what I just told you is the proposal we put into Accelerate R2. And if we don't get that, that's still what we're going to do, because it's still how we get technology into the hands of first responders. But the last thing I'll tell you guys is, if you're a startup out there and you're still trying to figure out how to get through your fundraising rounds, we are going to be starting a Safe Tech Angel Network with a sidecar fund. And so expect in 2021, there will be a national Safe Tech Angel Network. We will hold 4 meetings, and we are going to set up a sidecar fund to also invest in deals through. If you join Safe Tech Angel Network as a member, all of your dollars are going to go into a sidecar fund, and we're going to deplete those every year, investing in technologies in this arena. So we really have a lot going on, and I just want to make sure that you guys know that our team is 25 strong right now. So we're only 10 months old, but we've got 25 employees. So there's a lot of people behind me that make all of these things happen. I just come up with ideas and they go, I think we can do that. And and then I say, well, do we need to hire somebody? And then they say yes, and we hire somebody. And so I've got a great team. Then we're very eager to help bring technology to the market.
So our that's all really exciting stuff, and our audience primarily is the end user. If one of these folks that are watching says, we really have a technology challenge that we need to solve, what do you recommend to them? Like, how do they engage with you? How do they let you know that there's a need that needs to be solved?
Yeah, so a couple of things on the end user side is we have a completely dedicated space for end users in public safety and also in armed forces. And we, like I said, we put out that particular insights for them, where we show them new technology that needs their help. We did a survey, and there was a couple different questions, and one of the questions was, do you feel like you get to be involved in the development of the technology? And predominantly with major vendors, the answer is no. So they don't get to say how we want it or what are the features or anything like that. They kind of get presented, this is the product, those are the features. And so we then ask, what is their level of interest in participating in that, right? It's one thing to complain and say, well, I never get to do it. But then you immediately ask them, okay, but if you could, would you? It's very different to say you don't get to, but you wouldn't even participate if you had the opportunity. And so we've identified those people out. It's a list of 210 names right now. And these are individuals that we specifically, when we get a member, they get an email immediately that says, here's the new member. This is what their technology is. Here are their problem areas. Here's what the solution does. Does this solve any of your problems? And then the other thing is, as we start doing this roadshow and going around the country, we have one-on-one conversations with departments and say, well, what are your high priority needs? Because I will tell every first responder I ever stand in front of, if you have a need that is not being met by existing vendors, you have to share that with somebody. But if you share it with me, I'm going to go find a solution, or I'm going to make one. And I'll be honest with you, I have put that challenge in front of first responders all over this country, and I have had 2 people take me up on that opportunity. So I'm definitely making sure that they understand I'm dead serious. If you have a high priority need, it's creating line of duty deaths, it's creating undue stress, it's creating opportunities where you're putting people in unsafe situations, and you haven't found a solution, there is a solution, and I will go find that sucker. But you have to be the one who steps forward. And so we give them avenues and opportunities to do that. If they comment in the deal here, hey, we're interested in something that does this. Because guess what? I'm going to reach out to the National Advisory Council that I just mentioned. I'm going to reach out to my members, and I'm going to reach out to all my prior contacts and see, where do we find a solution? Because here's what we do sometimes when we stay inside our box is we forget to ask, what are other people using? And, how do you get around this? Maybe you just change a training protocol or a policy. Those are also solutions. It doesn't always have to be technology. So we're very eager to find solutions. And as long as I still have the fire, that's what I'm going to be focused on.
Yeah, that's incredible because I think, so many people, like you said, they complain, and that has a negative connotation, obviously, but they lament the fact that, oh, nobody's listening to me. And now you've sort of thrown the gauntlet down and said, look, I'll listen, but you got to come to me. You got to tell me what you need, and then we will go out and try and find a solution for it. So take that to heart, everybody that's listening. We'd love for you to put that request forward, and we'll get in front of Caleb, or you can reach out directly to make that request. So what's next on the horizon? Where's the roadshow heading?
So we just came back from sort of testing the waters, and that one thing that I can tell you, as long as public bathrooms are difficult to find on a 1,800-mile road trip, we're gonna probably slow play that. The other thing I have to make sure people understand is, I've got 25 employees, so I monitor the COVID situation very, very intently. I use a lot of data points for that to help guide our decision making. We had previously set up a roadshow that would take place here in the Midwest in July. And in August, we had intended on going to Phoenix and out to California. Now, we're going to monitor those things very closely. I can tell you, if COVID prevents those from happening, we also are intending on going to the remake technology for FDIC in September. So that takes us up into the Chicago, Wisconsin, all through the Missouri Valley Fire Chiefs and Kentucky and things like that. I do also think that IECP in New Orleans will make in October. I could be wrong, but I do think that that is a possibility. And so we're intending on doing that. That gives us 4 shows or 4 opportunities this year to go on the road. And if we find that to be unsuccessful, we do know that our good friend out at San Bernardino County, both with Esri and with Chief Munzie, we are considering doing a virtual roadshow because we do have cool tech. We do have an opportunity to show this tech off. And we can even tailor this technology around COVID-19 response or whatever it is that they think is necessary. So, but right now we intend on going on the road. We'll be doing that in July. And the cool part is Esri has given us the nonprofit access. And so I told people I wanted to be like Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. You will literally be able to go to safetech.org/roadshow, and you will watch the map where we're going. You will see us coming to an event. You will see us stop an event. We're going to use Survey 123, and you will see pictures of everybody at that event taking pictures of their favorite technology. Because one of the things that we didn't mention is when we do our roadshow, our intent was to go to a conference, but if those conferences aren't going to happen, we're just going to drive around and show cool tech. When we get to the furthest part out before we turn around and go back, we're going to choose a winner, and then we're going to go back and give $5,000 worth of technology to that department. So, and it'll be based off of whatever, they kind of feel like was their favorite tech. But, we are a nonprofit, so we have a unique ability to use our funds strategically for that. And at least for the next 3 years, my wife has given me the grace that Axlebox, our for-profit company, we fund the operations. So we're really focused on getting tech out there more than we are on funding salaries with our nonprofit.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's such a much needed beacon of light in the middle of, a difficult time for everybody. So, well, I think that's all the questions we're going to have time to dive into today. Ben, did you have anything else before?
Yeah, just one more. The most important question that we ask every guest on here is what's your TikTok username, Caleb?
I don't actually think I have a TikTok user.
We don't either yet. We keep talking about it, but
Ben, you
we're not
stole
there
my
yet.
joke. You stole my thing. That's my thing. So I'm gonna have to put a letterboard behind me now. I gotta steal your thing.
There you go.
No, actually, the most important question that we ask at the end of every podcast is, what do you think of Mike Mascherino's mustache?
Oh, right.
I don't, he was on the call with us last Thursday, but he never turned his camera on. I had not seen it. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm calling local PD up there.
That's probably a safe bet. It's Aurora Police Department in Illinois. So
yeah,
I'll get you the phone number.
Looks like, it cannot be good.
No, it's actually quite good. I'll be
Is
honest.
it?
Yes, I don't think Mrs. Masserino shares our sentiments, but
No, it's pretty epic. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna FaceTime him as soon as we hang up and figure
I
this.
think you should. I'd be like, I've heard the mustache is epic. So, well, listen, let's get the dance party started again here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
baby. Here we go. Theme music. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us today. Caleb, always a pleasure to see you, and for all the hard work that you do.
Yeah, Caleb, thank you. Great stuff. This is awesome.
Help us, help first responders, keep up the great work. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you have any questions for us, you can email us, Facebook us, tweet us, call us, and as Ben said, you can still not pick up us, or whatever you think about it. So, thank you guys very much. See you next time.
See you, buddy.